What's up? What's up, everybody? We are barking. It's dark outside, and we've got a great guest coming on tonight.
I saw you head nod into the. I saw you head nod into the intro. You got a little shoulder.
Yeah, I do it every time. I get a little fired up, man. That music gets me going. But listen, we got a special guest tonight on Bark After Dark, Matt Godwin. Across all channels, this is his third time on with us. He's the former director of player personnel at Georgia. Intimate knowledge of the program. We love talking to him. We thought, hey, who would be better to have on after game one? And Bruce, do we even want to waste any time talking about us and our insignificance, or do we want to go ahead and start talking about Matt Godwin?
I'm just drinking the same beer I drank last week. That's all I have to say.
Yikes, Bobby. I'm drinking nothing right now. I am. I don't feel great. I don't know. The old. I had some pizza today earlier at UGA. I had a couple pieces of pizza and hadn't been eating like that lately. But
what's the choice today? What was the pizzeria choice?
Papa John's. It was Papa John's.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
I can't remember last. I cannot wait. I mean, here's the thing. I can't remember the last time I ate Papa John's and thought, hey, that was a good decision. It never. So I haven't been eating like that, and I ate some today, and I feel like garbage. So and I have since. But let's get Matt Godwin on here. Bring him in. He's the man we need to be talking to. What's up, dude? How's it going?
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Doing well, man. Thanks for coming back on with us, Matt. We really appreciate it as always. And like we said, thought it would be apropos to have you on following game one of the season. It's normal reaction season. It's not. It's overreaction season in full effect. And a lot of people have a lot of questions. And we thought that you might be able to shed some light on some of those questions that folks have. So answer
them all right now. We're going to let you have the floor and answer all the questions right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, I was going to say, I'm like you. I'm drinking water today. So I'm coming off 3 straight days in Athens. So I didn't get back to Atlanta till today. Took about a 3-4 hour nap. So I'm on the struggle bus as well.
That's what time in Athens will do to you.
Yes.
For sure. I got home late after that game. Listen, you know what tore me up more than anything this week? And you're a Braves fan, right? You went to the Braves. You were going to a Braves game here a while back. Dude, what's killed me more than anything is this Braves-Dodgers series, because it's like a moth to a flame. I can't not watch Braves-Dodgers. And I stayed up every single night and watched every single one of those late games. And I'm still recovering. It's I can't do it like I used to it now that I'm 40. So.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the pitch clock has helped that, but it's still not great. It's still not great with the 10 p.m. first pitch. So
yeah, still not great getting to bed, at 1:30. But so all right, let's talk about the game a little bit now. True or false? Georgia's going to lose at least 6 ball games this year based on game one.
Ooh, man, you're putting me on the spot. I'm going to go TBD. We'll see. Well, we're in wait and see mode, so I don't want to make any proclamations. No, I would go false. I think we'll lose a few less than that, but we'll see. So I think my biggest rule of thumb, and I've been harping on this with my friends, is I don't think there are many, if any, conclusions you can draw off of week one. And that's been my rule of thumb for probably the last 7 years. And really that started after, I remember the Texas Notre Dame game, week one. Tyrone Swoops scores like a late touchdown. Texas ended up winning the ball game by like 3 points. And I remember in that moment, everybody was a prisoner of the moment. And it felt like those two teams were going to go on to do big things. Well, turned out Texas was Texas. Notre Dame had a down year. They both went 6-6, and they were both meaningless in the grand scheme of things. So since that game, that's my rule of thumb, is not that week one doesn't matter, but you just got to be really careful drawing conclusions from it. So
I would be curious, Matt, and I think a lot of people would. I've got several questions tonight, but this is probably chief among them. Was there anything you saw from game one that surprised you, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a few personnel surprises. Number one would be CJ Smith getting in there early and often. Not that I don't think CJ has a lot of ability, but when I left there in March, I feel like CJ, on his development path was a little bit behind, maybe. And partly that was due to injuries his first year. But he looks like he's filled out. And I mean, he got in there pretty much, I think, the first drive or the second drive and played a lot, made a couple plays. So I think that was a pleasant surprise. CJ Allen was another surprise. I mean, this guy got in second series of the game. And with Smile Mondin a little bit limited, it looked like CJ was kind of the third guy behind Xavier Sori and Pop. So that was a surprise. And then probably the last one would be the corner situation. Because corner's kind of been a question mark, I think, in everybody's head. And it ended up being Kamari Lassiter and Dalen Everett. And behind them, Julio Humphrey got some snaps. And then I guess the biggest surprise of all is that AJ Harris got in the game at corner before Nyland Green did. So I think there's a lot of surprises there. So that's there are probably more surprises to list out, but for me, those are probably the three biggest. So.
Now, when you look at kind of the way the game started, it was obviously kind of a slow first half. What was just kind of your thoughts on Carson and how he played? Because the Wolves are out. All right, there are people out there, diagramming what this kid missed and stuff like that, and how there was an open receiver in the middle of the field that he didn't see, and first start, I mean, was there anything that kind of surprised you or caught you off guard about the way he handled things or the way things were called early on in that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this guy's been waiting on his opportunity for a long time, right? I mean, this guy hasn't started a football game since he was in high school. So I expected some jitters. I didn't think he would be super sharp, and I bet you he would tell you he wasn't, but for the most part, I think it was really, really positive. And I'll draw some parallels here, right? So Stetson Bennett got his first start at Georgia 2020, year 4. By that point, he was probably 22, 23 years old. And I think if you compare this guy's first start to Stetson, this guy was a lot more impressive. So I guess that's the way I look at it is, it's his first start. I think everybody needs to pump the brakes a little bit. I think, I guess the biggest surprise or maybe the most disappointing thing for me was kind of the lack of tempo. I was at the game on Saturday. I felt like we were really slow and methodical. And maybe that was intentional, with the first time quarterback, a lot of new players. But I've always felt like, tempo helps offensive players. It makes the game easier for them. It makes it simpler. So I guess that was a little bit disappointing, a little bit of a surprise. But, ultimately, he missed a couple throws. But, guys, Patrick Mahomes misses throws. I think that, we have a tendency to be overly critical. And I think, people get caught up in the moment. They're a prisoner of the moment. And they see a guy miss a throw and they overreact. And that's just part of it. We're all guilty too. I am too. I don't want to make it seem like I'm, casting stones from my ivory tower because that's not the case. But I really liked what I saw. He moved well. His delivery looked really, really good. And, and frankly, I think we called the game a little bit different towards the end of the second quarter, going into the third quarter. And I think it really helped him. And to elaborate on that, I felt like, we were calling the game, really conservatively early on, trying to have him, make some short throws here and there, get the ball moving. And frankly, I think Carson's more comfortable, with the play action pass, rollouts, throwing on the move. He's actually more comfortable with the more difficult throws in a weird way. Whereas a guy like Jay Fromm, his bread and butter was the underneath stuff. And I think, Carson really started to play well, and the offense really opened up when we started pushing the ball downfield. and he settled in a little bit. But all in all, I think it was really positive. I hate stat sheet scouting, but I think the stats tell a pretty good story, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to build and grow. So,
a lot was made this week, Matt, of Mike Bobo's debut. That was something that people were really looking for, and I'm just curious, as a guy who worked, under Monken and close by with him and saw what he did. Were there noticeable fingerprints on this game that were decidedly Mike Bobo versus Todd Monken?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one thing Monken did really well was kind of changing things up. I don't think the last 2 years we were a quote unquote tempo team in the way that Tennessee maybe is. But we use tempo a lot. I mean, if you went back and charted drives, especially last year, I mean, say we had 12, 14 drives in the game, we probably used tempo at some point in 30, 40% of those drives. And we may not use it for the entire drive, but, Monk was big on tempo. He was big on, pre-snap motion. He was big on, just different things. We call them speed breaks, but what a speed break is when the entire offense is in a huddle and the defense can't get a read of what they're going to do formationally. All they know is, the personnel, and then you run to the line. Defense can't get, a good call in. They just have to run one of their base calls. So Monk was really good at kind of mixing in some of that. And I think it's definitely, I think Bobo has all that, in the playbook. I just think, it was game one, and let's be realistic, it was UT Martin. So I'm curious to see, how it progresses through the season. Just me speaking just personally, I hope we see more tempo. Like I said, I don't think of us as a tempo fast snap football team, but I think it's a weapon, to use. So, I don't think we saw a whole lot. It definitely didn't look great in the first half. I mean, let's be honest, we were out of sync. And I think part of that was just there's a lot of weird stuff happening in the game, between injuries and flags and all these different things. There were all these stops in the game. I think it was really hard for us to establish a rhythm. And I mean, it's pretty clear that we came out trying to throw the ball. We were running the quick game over and over and over and over. And, I almost, wonder if we would have been better off, kind of trying to pound the football and create a play action pass from that and then go from there. But, like I said, I think people are, overreacting. I mean, I think people are underestimating, how big of a role Mike Bobo played in our offense last year. I mean, this guy did our third down, red zone report every week. Some of those red zone calls that we used in games last year were Mike Bobo's. He had a huge part in the run game last year, working closely with Stacey Searle. So I think Mike Bobo's a really good coach. I'm not worried, and I don't think anybody else should be worried. Again, just because it's week one. So
you mentioned one thing in there too.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're not going to stop them.
They're
going to be worried.
The funny thing about that is, with Coach Smart, working at Georgia, the sky is always falling. So in a lot of ways, Georgia fans are just modeling the head coach. So it's kind of funny.
So you're saying that they take on the personality of their coach sometimes, huh?
Exactly. So I can't blame them. I can't discount any fans because having lived through it for almost 6 years, it's the same thing. So,
I got one quick one here before we. You mentioned this one, Matt, and I just wanted to touch on it real quick. Was UT Martin a little bit more impressive than you thought? I think that maybe they came into this game. People thought that this, we say sisters of the poor a lot, but I mean they're back-to-back Ohio Valley Conference champions. Like I said last night on the show, there's a degree of success that a program like that is used to. I think there were easier draws at the level that they play at than UT Martin. Personally.
Yeah, I mean, so I think when you're looking at, FCS teams, lower group of 5 teams, there's different styles of teams that can create challenges. Obviously, triple option's a major one. You don't want to play triple option teams. It's a nightmare. Kent State provided a lot of problems for us last year, and that's because they did some funky stuff with RPOs, formations. They had a quarterback that could throw it like 70 yards in the air. He was a really good athlete. So Kent State wasn't a triple option team, but they were a kind of a funky offense that gave you some challenging looks. And then with UT Martin, I don't think they did anything that crazy schematically. I think they were just a really well coached, sound football team. Like they were good at tackling. They weren't blown assignments. Up front, they competed. So I think it's more a tribute to Jason Simpson, having been there, 18, 19 years, that, they're just a really solid football team, and they don't have the guys that other schools have, obviously. But they were just really sound. You had to make plays. They were not going to give you plays, which is oftentimes what you see in these games. Is these teams are in over their head and they give you free points, and I don't think they really gave us any free points. And it was also funny seeing their quarterback. I mean, Ken K. Dent was a guy that we recruited. I don't know if it was reported that we recruited him, but he was a guy we liked. He had a really good arm. He was a good athlete. So it was kind of funny seeing him resurface because I'm going to be honest, I didn't do very much work on my UT Martin scouting report. So I had no idea what to expect. But when I saw him under center, it was kind of funny because he's a Power 5 guy that it didn't work out on his first stop. But don't think he's not a good football player, because he is. So, I mean, I definitely think that group was ready, and, Georgia, clearly did not play up to the standard.
All right, hey, listen, we got to jump into something real quick here. We got to talk about GameTime.co. Matt, I'm sure you've done this before. You've used StubHub. We've all used, all these different things, but GameTime.co is where it's at. GameTime they specialize in last-minute ticket deals. I mean, look at all that out there, right? I mean, it's all there. Georgia plays here in a few days again. That's the way it's going to be here for the next few months. And, listen, GameTime.co's got you covered. You can find tickets all over Sanford Stadium for Ball State. It's going to be crisp. It's going to be hot, and the tickets are going to be available. And you're going to want to get them at GameTime.co. I'm telling you right now, that app is one of the easiest to use apps I think I've ever followed, that I've ever used. Roosie's used it. I've used it. Right now, if you use the promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, you can get $20 off your first order. Terms apply. But you can get $20 off your first order using GameTime.co. Super easy app. Super easy to find tickets at the last minute. Let's say you're in Athens. You come in for a tailgate next Saturday. You're not actually going to go to the game. Go watch it downtown at the Georgia Theater. That's what you're thinking, right? Take a last minute look and see what Game Time's got, because you might find yourself a really good deal there. You might be able to use that promo code and get a phenomenal deal. So come check it out, gametime.co, and they have you covered. All right, Matt, one thing I do want to ask you here, defensively, Georgia gives up more rushing yards than they did all of last year, except to anybody but Oregon. Now, I don't know if you said, stat sheet scouting. Now you look a little deeper into that and you find out that about 80 of that came when the game was out of hand and or on 3rd and long. Was there anything that surprised you about how well they ran the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know if Coach Simpson calls the plays or who calls the plays for them.
He does.
But,
he indicated that after the game. Yeah, when we talked
to
him.
Yeah. So I think you saw some misdirection, and I think you saw it on the first drive of the game where they kind of hit a crease, outside, with Chaz Chambliss out there, and they got like a 10-yard gain. So I think there was a lot of misdirection. I think the run game had a little bit of flavor to it, but from what I saw, they weren't just lining up and running the ball for 5, 7, 8 yards against, our mint front, against our base defense. So I think they were creative. I think the quarterback obviously ran well. And like you referenced, a lot of that rushing came later in the game. So, I think, again, it was just a credit to Coach Simpson and that staff. because I think they did some things to confuse, Glenn Schumann and that defensive staff.
So we talked about personnel. We talked about Carson. We covered a lot of different bases. How big of an impact do you think? And obviously, listen, it's UT Martin, and you shouldn't have to open up the playbook to beat them up pretty good. You shouldn't have to, but a lot of folks, they like to lean on this whole, well, we went vanilla on purpose and we didn't show this and we didn't show that. How much truth is there to that, do you think? I mean, I know you're not in the game plan looking at the whole playbook, so I understand that, but how much do you think there is to coaches kind of, maybe playing it a little bit more basic in these early pay for play games?
Yeah, I think it varies coach to coach. I think, with Bobo philosophically in these games, he's trying to get the ball in people's hands and let them make plays. So I definitely think there's an element of truth. It's hard to really define, what that kind of delineation is between, one of these, so to speak, warm-up games versus an SEC game. It's hard to really differentiate, where that is exactly. In terms of the red zone and third down, there's definitely looks you don't want to show, right? Because, during the practice week, we spend a lot of time on situational football. Situational football is critical. And you spend a lot of time in the red zone, high red, low red, third down, fourth down, all these different situations. And, that's where you spend a lot of time, in the meeting room drawing up concepts. Is we want our best plays to be in those situations. So I think in those specific situations, you're going to see a little bit more vanilla looks. But in terms of just first, second down, I think you're more or less running your offense. You're running the stuff that you installed that you plan on running throughout the season. So and like I said, again, it varies coach to coach. So without being in those meetings, without being in that building, I don't know what we showed. We obviously didn't show any trick plays, and most teams carry 2 to 3 trick plays into a game. So is it fair to call what we did vanilla? I don't necessarily think so. But you're definitely not going to show everything.
Matt, we talked a little bit about this when we got started, the idea of overreaction and, people on the message boards, people clipping things out, people trying to just make sense of all this. And like I said, a lot of hair pulling and hand wringing going on. From a being in the room with it standpoint, how much of that are you guys hearing? I mean, I'm not saying you're paying attention to or like doing anything that would be shaped by that, but how much of that is flowing back into the staff at that point?
I would say that there's awareness, just being realistic, right? We're in the 21st century. A lot of recruiting happens on Twitter. Our coaches are on Twitter all the time. Our sports staffers are on Twitter all the time. Now, people aren't like reading through message boards and getting in the nitty gritty, but we're all on Twitter. Just being realistic. So I think that everyone sees it and it's never talked about. It's never addressed. Like, damn, our fans are wearing us out. That's never a conversation that happens. But let me be very clear: the coaching staff is 10 times more critical than the fans could ever be. These Sundays after a game are brutal. I mean, I used to sit in on the special teams meeting every week, and the level of detail in that meeting every week always blew me away. And it was always like we were facing a crisis. So, as much as the fans blow up, believe me, the attention to detail in that building, far, far surpasses that. So, the fan freak out is definitely, it's acknowledged, but at the same time, the culture that Kirby's created, where accountability is at such a premium, there's so much pressure that's internally created by these coaches. I mean, these coaches are really good coaches, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So they don't need fans to say, "Oh, that was a horrible call. Oh, why did we do this?" Because we're already having those conversations before the game. are we sure we want to do this in this situation? Are we sure we want to, call this play with this player in the game? So these are conversations that happen before the game. Then after the game, you follow back up and, you're really critical about what you did. So, rest assured, nobody is more critical of our play than Kirby Smart. And a lot of that is driven home on Monday of each week. On Monday, we do a corrections walkthrough that lasts a while. And it's going over, what we did wrong. And believe me, there's a lot we did wrong because there's a lot we did wrong in every game.
Sorry, I was muted there for a second. I couldn't get it to unmute.
Paul's
back on the internet. That's what we're doing again. We were playing on this internet again, Grandpa. When you talk about, I was watching the secondary a lot on Saturday because of the new pieces. Dalen Everett coming. The funny thing was, Matt, I think I was talking with you. You and I were texting about this. I told you after that second scrimmage, I was like, hey, man, Julian Humphrey, or you called him Julio. I like that better. Julio Humphrey got most of the reps at one in that scrimmage. Then the following Saturday, they do kind of that dress rehearsal type deal, kind of a major practice, but they go through some of the same, protocols, game day, stuff like that. Again, lining up with the ones. Kirby said Monday, and I guess it was a harbinger of or not really, it's kind of an indication of things to come. Hey, these guys still have live reps. It'll be decided, during the week. Next thing you know, the guy who barely got any reps with the ones in the second scrimmage, Dalen Everett, starting. So that whole thing kind of had me really staring at the secondary to see how they played. Anybody stand out to you in that group? Because I've got a name in mind, but I just wanted to know if kind of you had the same name in mind.
Yeah, Malachi Starks.
Yeah,
looked like, he looked like the player that we thought he could become. And he's still got some things to improve. He's still got some things to clean up. The one-handed interception attempt kind of cracked me up because it's like, whoa there, buddy. Calm down. We know you've got some playmaking ability, but go up with two hands. But yeah, Malachi Starks jumped off at me, and it's funny because I had heard that from a couple of scouts. Whoever number 24 is, because scouts work on one class at a time, right? So they're not filing reports on Malachi Starks, Michael Williams, these underclassmen. But I had a couple of scouts, like this number 24 is a pretty good player for y'all. And he just seemed to be all over the field. And he wasn't just, bringing people down when he was tackling them. He was striking them. And there's a difference between getting a guy down and like hitting them and imposing your will on them. And
a couple splatter tackles. A couple of those, like Kirby says, splatter tackles. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time he made contact with somebody, he was bringing all 205 pounds or whatever he weighs. So he looked really confident. He looked really sure of himself. I think last year, he had some freshman moments. And a lot of that was just self-doubt. We have a really complex defense. We have a defense that's, in some ways more complicated than a lot of what you see in the NFL. It's not easy for guys to execute, especially at the safety position. Safeties have to be really, really smart. They have to be really detailed. And I think Malachi, he kind of fits the bill there. But, when you're a true freshman, you're handling all that volume in our play sheet. It's hard, man. It's hard. And it's hard to have confidence. And confidence, with football, just at about any position is one of the most important factors. And he looked like a confident year two football player. But outside of that, I think Kamari Lassiter was fine. I felt like Dalen Everett looked good. Dalen had that one flag, but, I don't ever worry about that stuff too much. In college football, you can put your hands on guys. You can be physical. And I think our guys are physical. They do put their hands on guys. We're going to get flags. That's just a reality of it. And in the NFL, that's something you got to clean up because in the NFL, you can't put your hands on guys. I think it was Vic Fangio, was talking to Kirby about that like a couple years back. He's like, man, when I watch y'all's defense, y'all's DBs mug these receivers, and that's just college football. So I thought Dalen did some good things. I felt like Bull looked comfortable at safety. That was a natural transition for him. I think his skill set is very similar to Chris Smith's. I think Bull is probably a little bit faster than Chris was. Chris is a little bit bigger, but very similar skill sets. And then, the last guy I want to mention, Tyke Smith, he looked really physical with the underneath stuff. I think defending the underneath flats, all that's Tyke's bread and butter. He's really good at block destruction. He's a really good tackler. He's a really physical, instinctive football player. Some of his struggles get highlighted in the vertical passing game, right? And we didn't see that on Saturday. So, I don't want to bring negativity into the equation because Tyke had a really good game, but the stuff he did in that game, that's stuff that he's always shown at Georgia, right? Last year when we played against run-heavy teams that like some of that perimeter action in the flats and some of the short game, Tyke played a lot in those games. So like Florida is a heavy personnel team that ran the ball last year. So Tyke's snap share was actually more than Javon Bullard's at that star position. So, he's been this type of football player. And now, with Chris Smith gone, Bullard moved back, and, now Tyke's the guy. So I think there's a lot of positivities to take away from that DB group. I felt like overall, they probably played better than any position group on that defense. So,
all right, Matt, we normally send everybody out of here on the same questions, but we've already asked you those questions, so we can't do that again. But I think Ro and I both have one last question here for you each. So my question is, going into next week, what do you expect to be different? What are you looking for that maybe we didn't see in game one? How does Georgia change this approach, and what are the steps forward that you want from game one to game two?
Yeah, I mean, I think defensively, I think that the game plan and the way that the game is called will be very similar, right? I think that we'll be looking for a little bit cleaner execution, particularly from that linebacker group. I think Jamon Johnson would tell you that was not his best game. He had a couple plays he left out on the field. So I think that defensively we'll look very similar to what we were. We're not going to break out our crazy exotic third down pressures. We're probably going to save that for South Carolina and Auburn, just being realistic. So I think, they're just going to emphasize tightening up on execution. We have to go out and make plays. So I think defensively, you'll see a solid group. There won't be a ton of havoc next week. I think everybody likes these havoc-oriented defense where you're getting sacks and TFLs. And, sacks and TFLs are going to come. But I think, next week will be really sound on defense. And that's our identity. That's what Kirby's identity has been his entire career. And then offensively, I think that we'll see a stronger emphasis on the run game early in the game. I think we'll try to establish it first couple drives. And I don't know that we'll do this, but I'm hoping, like I referenced earlier, that we'll see a little bit more tempo. So I think stronger emphasis on the run game early, build the play action pass off of that, and then see how the game goes. And hopefully, the offense looks good. And this whole process with these first four games, right, is, the biggest thing for this football team, looking ahead, looking down the road, which that's taboo. I'm not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to look down the road. It's supposed to be one game at a time.
You're out now, dude. You're a free man.
You're in a safe
You're
space.
A free man. You can think for yourself now.
It's a safe space on Park After Dark to look ahead.
The biggest thing with this football team, right, is having the quarterback build confidence, number one, right, and having these receivers and these skill guys build confidence. I think you saw some good things, but we just got to have consistency, right? Arian Smith did not play his best, and I see people dogging him left and right, but I've heard really good things about what he did in spring ball, what he did in camp. So I'm confident that he's going to turn around and have a good game this week. But, guys like that, like Arian, like Dominic Lovett, CJ Smith, Ra Thomas, we need these guys to build confidence because they all have a lot of ability. But again, to execute, you got to have confidence. So, getting these guys the ball in these games is critical, when we play some of these teams later in the year.
I'm really interested to see CJ Smith this Saturday if Ladd gets held out again. Which, for those out there that read our story today about, Kirby saying Ladd's day to day, he also said David Marshall was day to day one time, and David Marshall had a 9-month injury. But Ladd is not that beat up. He was on the sideline jumping and doing windmill high fives and chest bumps and stuff on Saturday, just dealing with some back stuff. And from what we understand, it's precautionary. And I have a hard time believing, based on what I've heard, that if South Carolina rolled into town or Tennessee or something or they were headed to Tennessee, that Ladd wouldn't be on the bus. But I am interested to see CJ Smith. My last question for you, Matt. What are the odds you think that Kirby fires Mike Bobo after this Saturday?
I'll take a step back on the day-to-day diagnosis. I'll just say no comment. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I'd say I don't see Kirby Smart firing Mike Bobo. I don't think there's any reason to. I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on that team. I know they're going to get coached really, really hard this week. Monday practice is usually a little bit lighter, like I referenced. They do a corrections walkthrough. There's a lot of scouting reports. There's a lot of scout periods in practice. So it's less physical. It's less intense. And then Tuesday, Wednesday is when things are going to get ramped up. And I know these coaches are going to be coaching these guys really, really hard. Because, again, we did not play great in game one, but that's okay. You won the game, and there were a lot of positives to take away. And all you can do is get better from it. You can play cleaner. You can play more physical. You can play more sound. So I expect to see a better effort in week 2, and I expect to see an even better effort in week 3. Because the one thing about this team and this group of guys, and they showed this last year, is that when the big opponents, right, show up, this team shows up. So I expect to see that, a few weeks from now.
Real quick answer on this, because I'm glad you said that, because I that is something I did want to get to. How much does that piss Kirby off? That because I know he wants that kind of like, doesn't matter who we're playing, doesn't matter who's it, but they are human, and it is obvious. It is just blatantly obvious. You saw it every single time it happened last year. They were different against Samford, Kent State, Missouri, and Georgia Tech than they were against everybody else. And I think that does that bother him? Do you think that eats at Kirby?
Absolutely. It's a huge point of frustration for him and our fans. Again, drawing that parallel. So yeah, absolutely, it eats at him. It causes him to lose sleep at nights, and not just him, all the coaches, everybody in that building. But it's a fine line, right? It's a tough balance, because going into a game like UT Martin, like Ball State, you're trying to convey a message to the team that we got to respect these guys, we got to play hard, but at the same time, you can't build them up to be more than they are, right? Because you start to lose credibility. Because look, our kids are smart. They're not dumb. They're not just going to blindly follow a message. So if you tell them that Ball State's the 85 Bears, they're going to say you're full of shit. So it's excuse my language there, but it's
no, you're line. Good. This is Mark After Dark. Let it go.
No. This is what we do it for.
Yeah, so it's a fine line. Where you got to give them the proper amount of respect, but you can't build them up to be more than they are. And Kirby's a master at that. And yeah, I mean, these games have proven to be frustrating for us over time. I mean, we played really, really poorly against Kent State last year. We played poorly against Samford. We played poorly against Missouri, Kentucky. Not that those teams are equal to a Ball State, but it's not like we just blew every team out last year. Now, we had the number 1 margin of victory in college football last year, but there were a few games where we weren't as clean as we probably should have been. So that's just a reality, and that's just the way it is. So you just got to prepare each game and, properly, frame the message to the team so that, they're on the same page and they're with you.
Yeah, number one team in college football in margin of victory last year because you just beat the shit out of the good teams, most of them anyway. The national championship game 1, game 3. That's how it goes. Matt, you're the best, dude. Thanks so much for coming on with us. Awesome. We really appreciate it. And you bring credibility to a show that severely lacks it. So we
have none.
I appreciate it.
Take it easy, dude.
Thanks, Matt.
He said, my man said, he goes, you can't tell them they're going to play the 85 Bears every week, or they'll tell you you're full of shit. Yeah. So I love it.
And then he backed off like we're not like the Cinemax 1130 of Georgia podcast, the weird stuff happens here. That's what we know. It's proven.
Yeah, I'm just way curvy in a different way. I can
see Palmer laughing in the background because he was on that Cinemax at 11:30. I know what's going on.
He was the scrambled channels, the outlines and shit. Yeah, he was in there. This is getting off the rails real fast. All right, let's get to our Jake on Jake. We're jaking off. Let's talk about. I got a question for you because it almost happened to me earlier today.
I got one for you too.
This is a two-parter. When was the last time this happened? And on a scale from 1 to 10. How depressed do you get when you're trimming your beard and you mess it up?
Oh, that's such a bad feeling. It's like I'll tell you what. Listen, I resisted the urge for years to invest in some good beard trimmers. Like I bought some like kind of crappy stuff. Like this will work. This is fine. I've got the Phillips One blade, and I really like that thing. It's a pretty effective tool. It's good for the trimming and stuff. If you start getting into like trying to get this thing down, though, that's a whole different factor. And it feels real bad when you mess it up. It is super depressing. There's no question about it because there is like, it's not, there's very few moments in life where as soon as something happens, you're like, we've got to scrap it all. It's all done. Forget about it.
So my thing is I have to have what shitty beard that I've got because I have a really fat face right now. Like, I have I'm I got the double chin and everything. I'm such a fat face. And dude, I swear to God, I will say the most self-hatred things in the mirror when I don't have my fat. Like my wife my wife heard me the last time I messed up my beard. I shaved my face and I'm over there talking to myself in the mirror and she goes, Jesus Christ, are you going to be okay?
We're going to have to send you to a counselor.
Yeah, I say a lot of words. You were talking about fat face. There's another F word that I'm using. I'm just saying really mean things to myself. Okay, and I don't even look good with one, but at least I look okay, and it's like some makeup to kind of hide my face.
It's a good thing, and you got a little I like your little soul patch thing you got.
Jesus. Yeah.
It's like three dark hairs that are hanging on right there under the lip.
There's about 9, all right. But here's the deal. The other day we were on I had a little streak going on our YouTube channel of all the different shows that I'd been on. And I was kind of started to see things, and I thought something was on the computer monitor over there for it. And I was over there like doing like this, I was like wiping it. I thought there was a speck on there, but it was actually just this crappy little soul patch that I got. But I almost did it today. Like I like the one thing you never do. Never if you're right-handed, don't do it with your left hand. Okay, do not try to trim with your left hand, and don't ever try to do like anything other than short motions. I tried to do like a big long swoop and get the whole curvature right here. Nah. Took it down way too low. Actually, I did it on this side. All right, so I did it on this side.
That's what I'm curious.
I do have a good trimmer, okay. Dude. And it is.
To me, what the key for me was finding the guard, right? Finding the right guard. Mm-hmm. I think I use like the 3 or the 5 millimeter, whatever. But like finding that guard and being able, like that gets it to where it needs to be every time. Before I was just kind of freehanding it, like I'm some sort of cosmetologist or something. Like I have any right to do that. I would not have done what I did to a stranger on my face. So I don't know why I was trying to pull it off, man. It was a mistake.
Dude, we got a barber shop in Jefferson called The Riveter. Go check them out. I don't go there really all the time because there's another barber in Jefferson that watches old pro wrestling on his TV while he cuts my hair, and I get to watch it through the mirror, and I really enjoy that. and it's a little cheaper. But the Riveter, one time I go in there, and she's like, "Hey, you want me to trim your beard? I'll do it for free." And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." Dude, I walked out of there looking somewhat Puerto Rican. Okay. Like I walked out of there like dying, like I thought I was Pitbull for a minute, dude.
We should maybe change the name of the show to Somewhat Puerto Rican.
Yeah, I look like I look a little like Drake, to be honest with you. Fat Drake is what kind of Fat like Joe.
You had the fade beard going on.
Oh man, she had faded it in from here, and she'd cut it down. She had cut it down low enough to the thick. Yeah, she'd cut it down low to the thick part, and had gotten it real full. Oh yeah, man, your boy. I mean. My wife, I walked in and my wife saw me, and like a couple minutes later, I heard her singing the lyrics to "Pretty Fly for a White Guy." So
nice.
I think that was why. But go ahead with your question. I'm glad it incited some good confidence. Good conversation.
That was a good one. No, I'm just curious. Obviously, you and I were texting about this. I think last night about Burning Man, and I'm just curious, Jake Rowe. Pro music festival or anti music festival?
I've never been. I really do want to go, and I would, but I'll tell you what, man. Like, as somebody who's saving for 3 kids for college, and live in a house in today's modern interest rates that we just moved into last September. Got a good job. We handle all of it. It's great. It's fine. Whatever. I got 2 daughters. I'm about to pay for weddings one day, so I'm big into kind of saving. I want to retire one day, even though I really believe that the line of work I'm in is my retirement plan via, if Lauren Smith's still, doing his thing.
You're going to be the Lauren Smith of the beat.
I ain't said I'm going to be Lauren Smith. I'm just saying I think I can ride into my 80s if I need to, if I even live that long, right?
Sure.
I mean, I'm probably going to be dead within 15 years. But they're just so expensive now, man. Like I would love to go to like a Shaky Knees or I don't know that I'd want to do Burning Man or Bonnaroo or anything that, serious. But yeah, I'd love to go to a little bit more of a smaller music festival, something with like Jason Isbell and Zach Bryan and Marcus King bands, something like that. Just as long as it's my type of music. But honestly, dude, do you remember back in our hangout days when I really had this bug about wanting to go to Ultrafest? You remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah. You were like gung ho. Like you were like, I think.
I really wanted to go. I really wanted to go. We had seen a video. We'd watched like a 2-minute video, and Ultrafest is like an EDM festival. And I'm telling you, man, that is one of the coolest videos I've ever seen. They made that shit look so fun.
That's winter jam for people on ecstasy, buddy. I mean, that's all it is. That's I mean, it was, I got it. I understand it. It looks great. I've been to the Hangout Festival, I think twice, maybe 3 times at this point.
Yeah, Hangout. I do hang out. Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'm anti music festival. It's expensive. The experience is not comfortable. Not that I'm saying like a concert has to be, right? But like you're sitting out there baking in the sun. Beers are like $11. The porta potties have all been thrown up in. It's just the vibe is bad, dude. I mean, now my dad's done the VIP experience. I haven't done that. And he says that's the only way to go. And it's the only way he would go back. But it's like private restrooms and open bars and things like that. That appeals to me. I don't have the cash to do that, but I could see it from that perspective. General admission, man, when they've come down and like I said, to me, I need a clean bathroom. That's it. I can get through most things in my life with a clean bathroom, but a bathroom that's in disarray, that makes for a tough day, man.
Yeah, I mean,
in the sun.
And you're the one that taught me this trick. I mean, your only other option is just to eat Imodium. Just eat the Imodium and deal with what happens. Deal with feeling like junk 3 days later for sure. Hey, listen, we can have the money to go do the VIP experience. If we got the money to buy a couple ski masks, we can get the money to do the rest. can go get an armored truck and just make it happen. Criminal conspiracies being hatched here on Bark After Dark. We don't know who we're having on next week. We never do.
Hey, join us next week for another episode of Somewhat Puerto Rican. We look forward to having you. We're going to have a great time as usual. No, yeah, we'll get somebody.
Maybe I'll go back there and get them to do that beard and come on here. I'll go next Monday. I'll have them do the beard for me, and then we can kind of get on here, and I can maybe do like a pit bull thing, maybe get a little gold chain going action. Maybe and do the hair too, get it cut nice and get the actual fade going.
You with a fade.
Oh man, I'm not committed enough to do that. Like I was thinking about it, like almost like going to Ultra Fest, but
yeah. No, we'll be back next week for sure with a undetermined at this point. But
listen, John T. Edge is coming up soon. John T. Edge is coming up soon. He and I are supposed to touch base very soon.
We've got a list, and if you have suggestions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. If you got somebody you'd like to see on Bark After Dark, we'd love to hear who you want to see. And if you got connections, please reach out to them and tell them to reach out to us. We'd love that too.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Absolutely. But if you don't know John T. Edge, I do want to tell folks we're working on this. So John T. Edge is the host of I've just lost the name. True South. Yeah, I was about to say Deep South. True South on the SEC network. He is a University of Georgia undergrad. I believe he is from Gray, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken.
Surely he's graduated.
No, he went to Georgia for undergrad. He went to graduate school at Ole Miss.
He was a Georgia undergrad, as if he was in sophomore year, living in
sorry.
Hall,
yeah, and you want to talk about somebody with a legit soul patch? Johnny T. Edge has a legit soul patch, okay? But he's a published author, real tight with Wright Thompson. They do a phenomenal job on that show, and he wrote basically the Southern Bible when it comes to restaurants in the South and culture. I think he's got a beautiful way of storytelling, and I would love to have him on and talk to him. And I know he drinks a lot of bourbon too, or used to at least. I don't know if he does anymore, but he seems like our kind of guy. But hopefully we'll have him on soon. And like Ruth said, we've got a list. We're going to start, kind of adding to that list even more. And if you've got somebody you would like for us to have on, that'd be great too. And I think at some point this season too, Roos, we want to get, we definitely want to get our Oak Ridge High School connection on, the father of Justin Williams, so that he can give us an update on how Joseph Jonah Ajanye and Justin Williams are doing in their senior seasons. And we all
strong early.
Yeah, they are looking very strong. Yeah. And we also are probably going to check in with Andy Staples again at some point this season. And talk with him about some stuff.
And Dean Legge probably will work his way back into the fold.
Yeah, Dean Legge's got to come back.
We got another with him. So we'll play the hits, but also we're going to bring some new faces on. Like I said, if you got somebody you want to see, please let us know that. We would love the suggestions, and we welcome them.
And at one point, we once we got Matt Godwin off the interview here, I thought, man, we're going to get this show done in 50 minutes. But like everything else I do in my life, I failed at it. So here we are. We got a little somewhat Puerto Rican, and we lost ourselves, and we lost 10 more minutes. So, hey, y'all take care. Have a great week. We will do the Georgia show on Wednesday night, and then we'll be with you post-game on this channel after Georgia more than likely beats up Ball State pretty good. So, y'all take care, and we'll see you next Monday.
Rock and roll.